Oh, g'day everyone, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to show you 3 moves or patterns that happen over and over in chess that you can play in your games that will instantly raise your level of chess play. Now, before everyone gets distracted by the Hans Niemann meme there, I just want to say, when you watch advanced players, when you play through their games, there are certain odd looking moves that are played over and over again, moves that beginner players might never even consider. Yet advanced players spot these moves automatically, almost without thinking. And you might think, are they thinking 10, 15, 20 moves ahead to find these moves? Are these deep ideas? Well, not really, actually. It's just experience and just sheer number of games played that the advanced players just know that these moves will work almost any time they're able to be played. So there's not really too much deep thought that goes in behind these in a lot of cases. But they're moves that you need to know because it'll 100% make you move from beginner to advanced much quicker because they're just such important moves. So ready to get into it? All right, let's start with the first move, which is King B1. So impenetrable king safety. Now this is one of those moves where we've castled on opposite sides here, and you think, white really wants to start pushing the pawns as quickly as possible and creating an attack on the black king. And that might be fine, that might be true, but one of white's best moves in this type of position will always be King B1 when white's castled, or likewise when black's castled queenside. The reason for that is it gets the king to a much safer square. And this is the type of thing that will only really come into play 10, 15, 20 moves down the line when the position starts opening up. You do not want your king to be on C1. You really want it to be on B1, just away from any sort of pressure down the C file that black's going to have with their rooks. Likewise, the queen could come to A5, put pressure on A2. So that king guards a lot of things and gets out of the way. Likewise, that C1, H6 diagonal, if white's king remains on C1, later on when the game opens up, a bishop on G5 can really win the game for black, because when you get the bishop lined up on the king and the queen like that, you're toast as white. So King B1 is one of those moves where not much calculation is required. You've got to make sure that it's one of those moves that work in the specific position, but generally if there's no immediate threats, it's one of those moves you can just play and know that your king's going to be probably 10 times safer in the game when it opens up. So another example of that is, let's take a look at if white had castled queenside in a similar type of Sicilian setup and played the move F4. So in this position, you can see the king is exposed in that diagonal. Usually when you play F4, when you're kingside castled, you know that you move the king to H1. Well, if you think about it, what's the difference, right? Because if the king remains on C1, it's as if you have left your king on G1 on a kingside castled position. So for similar reasons that you'd play, king from G1 to H1 on a kingside castle with an F4 pawn push, you move your king to B1 when you castle queenside. And I'll show you one more example. When it's not a Sicilian, this is a Petrov where the pawns have been exchanged on E4 and E5, and the knight has taken on C3, and white has recaptured D takes C3. And we get into the similar opposite castling situation. Again, white to move. White can instantly start playing moves like H3 to play G4 and all that. But one of those moves that you're never going to go wrong in playing is King B1. So that really ticks off move 1, which is creating that impenetrable king safety. Okay, so let's move on to move number 2, which is the ultimate defender. Now that's a bit cryptic, but this is the best way to explain it. This is a standard type of position where it happens in a lot of D4, D5 openings, where white ends up pushing the pawn from e3 once the other pawns get exchanged in the center, e3 to e4, then to e5, and other different types of openings as well can lead to this type of position. Black, if you look at Black's king is absolutely naked except for these 3 pawns. So those 3 pawns are the only defenders that the king has. White's threatening moves like, not queen e4 in this position, of course, but White's threatening to put pressure on that diagonal, whether through bishop b1 and queen c2. Oops, keep getting this happening with the analysis board. Or simply with moves like h4, knight g5, etc., etc. And White, if you think about it, has 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces that are either pointing at the black king, like the bishop, or are 1 move away from being in the attack. And Black really doesn't have any defenders, just that bishop on e7, which is probably, you can argue, almost a liability because it blocks the queen from coming in to defend the king as well. So, what is Black's ultimate defender in this position? Well, normally, a knight on f6 is very, very standard, but also very, very important. So I'm just going to put the knight here and move the pawn back. In this type of a position, Black has protection on the h7 square. He can always move his rook back to protect the f7 square, and the bishop can also always drop back to protect the g7 square. And Black's position can be pretty solid in these types of positions. But in this kind of a situation where White's pawn is on e5, you cannot get your knight on f6. So where is the next best spot for the knight? f8. Now this looks so passive, and as a beginner you think, you want to move forward and attack and I'll get my knight over here and get it on d3 somehow. Sometimes you just need to drop your knight back. And then when White plays a move, drop your knight back. Now, forget this exact position, the concept remains, because that knight on f8 really bolsters up Black's defenses, because that weakness on h7 is protected, and later down the line, Black can also play moves like knight g6, which in a lot of cases the black knight can come into f4 because the bishop's a lot of the time not on this diagonal. It's usually maybe on b2 or some other diagonal and not protecting that square. So Black's knight can come here, it puts pressure on that e5 pawn, blocks that diagonal, and really serves as Black's best defensive piece. So in this situation, we're looking at, what would Black want to play? Black would have to consider, do I want my knight on d5? If I move my knight to d5, I'm pretty much relinquishing any sort of defense on this h7 square. So Black really has to weigh up their chances. Can I withstand an attack from White and start getting aggressive myself and putting my knight on squares like d5? Or do I want to keep my bishop's diagonal open, keep my rook open, and get my knight over here? Because then the chances that White's going to have any sort of successful attack drop significantly. So that whole maneuver, getting the knight to f8, is not an obvious one, but advanced players see it instantly. Whereas a beginner might sort of, panic when White starts putting pressure on that h7 square and thinking, oh my god, what do I do? What do I do? Start blocking the diagonal this way and pretty much weakening this whole suite of squares. Simply playing it calm, knight d7, knight f8, pressure's off, White has no attack. Realistically, White honestly cannot make much progress here unless Black just plays back and forth and lets White have so much time, as much time as he needs to create an attack. So that's move number 2. Now the third one, again, maybe cryptic, maybe you guys can read between the lines, eliminating the sniper. So the sniper is usually the fianchettoed bishop. And it's whoever has the fianchettoed bishop, in this case Black. This is a Benoni type of pawn structure. Black wants to play b5 and open up the queenside. Black's one of their best pieces is this bishop, because it is a king on this diagonal, or a sniper in this case, right? So what you want to do is you want to get rid of that bishop if you can. And the way you do that is by lining up your bishop and your queen on the same diagonal. Usually the bishop's on e3 and the queen on d2, but in this case the bishop's on g5. And you want to get your bishop here, because now black cannot move the bishop because he loses the exchange. And if he takes, your queen comes in, and that whole diagonal is no longer a problem for you. Not only that, your knight's jumping in here at some point. Moves like f4, e5 are coming in, eliminating this knight, again putting pressure here on h7. And like again, if you guys are following, a knight on f8 alleviates that pressure, because it's really hard to remove that knight. So what's another example? This is a classic Sicilian dragon variation. Again, both sides of castle on different sides of the board. And again, in this case, white has a suite of options: h4, g4, king b1, like we looked at earlier, again getting off that diagonal, or trading that bishop, because white essentially wants to get rid of that. Now there's no pressure down here, and this is happening. That's white's plan. Now you might think, damn, I've worked so hard to get my bishop fianchettoed. How can I stop this from happening? It'll be such a shame to lose my key piece, my sniper. Well, very simply, if it was black to move here, rook e8 is always a move you've got to consider, or rook, anywhere away from f8. Because now if the bishop goes here, oops, that's anticlimactic. You just simply move the bishop back. And you might think, is my bishop stuck there? Well, actually, your bishop's still really, really strong, because it hasn't changed. It's just dropped back. It's in a more bunkered position. Whereas your bishop now is blocking your queen, blocking your rook. It's actually not part of the game. It's actually taken its eye off the d4 square, which that bishop was applying pressure to. And after moves like queen b6 at some point, white's got to be careful he doesn't lose a knight. So yeah, those are the three moves: king b1, knight f8, and the combination of bishop e3 or f4 g5 and queen d2, followed by bishop h6. These come so naturally to advanced players, these ideas, but if you're a beginner, you might either not have seen them before or never even considered them. They're super powerful. They work in any position, these ideas. When they show up, you just got to get the tactics right of the position, but you can't go wrong playing them. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Smash your next chess games online or in person in tournaments or whatever, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace out.